Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by the Pete's, Pete Mohan and Pete Worth. Fellas, how you doing?
That's us.
That is us. And we're doing well, very well, because it's Beat Bucky week.
It's Beat
and
Bucky.
and I just have to say I've been to 4 out of the last 5 Marquette Badger games, and Marquette's won 2. So I could say I'm kind of a good luck charm for Marquette.
And you're going?
And I'm going on Saturday. So good things are in our future.
Well, whether good things are in our future or not, this is undoubtedly one of the most fun weeks to be a Marquette fan. The rivalry against Wisconsin, yes, it is a rivalry. Whether Wisconsin Badger fans say that it's not or that it is a rivalry, and it's one of the most fun weeks on our calendar. It's been dubbed on Twitter as Badger Hate Week. But this year, maybe a bit different than the past few years, this year, Wisconsin is good, and Marquette has the promise to be good. And this game, I think, maybe means a little bit more than it has the past few years. It's always intense, but I think this year, the winner really continues to set themselves up for a quality season. And for Marquette specifically, we need strong non-conference wins because the Big East isn't looking too great right now. So, fellas, this feels like a little bit bigger game than it even normally is, and I think that's saying a lot.
Yeah, and in the new arena, so this game will be played in the Fiserv for the first time. Ethan Happ's a senior, so it means that much more to Wisconsin fans. I am super excited to go to the building for the first time. I will be wearing my Beat Bucky pin very boldly on my chest, on my lapel, I should say. And, I think those two factors and also both teams being, above average teams. We're still long season to play, but all those factors combine to make a really exciting possibility for a game on Saturday.
Now, Pete Mohan, I think you could reasonably say that both teams are top 30 quality teams, right? Maybe not top 25 for Marquette quite yet, but as we piece it together, I think you said on the last podcast that Marquette has the possibility to piece it together offensively against Wisconsin for the first time, and you've seen signs of that.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly some things that are coming together. For me, at least, and I kind of want to bring this back to the beginning of the season discussion. For me, the biggest thing is the improvement of our defense, actually. Well, yeah, it would be nice to get our three-point shot rolling in this Wisconsin game, and I think that we have some positive regression in our three-point shooting statistics. I'm most looking forward to how we defend Wisconsin. And when we said before the year that we thought the defense would be ahead of the offense, I think that we've kind of seen that to this point. The things that have held us back on offense have been turnovers and not making some open threes that we've had. So this will be an interesting matchup too, because Wisconsin doesn't really steal the ball well on defense, and we turn the ball over a lot. So I'm interested to see if we can take advantage of that, non-gambling Wisconsin defense and allow us to not lose as many possessions that way. I think that there's a lot of interesting dynamics, but overall, this game is always kind of a toss-up. It really comes down to who can steal momentum and who can hit their shots. And I think that at the very least, having the home crowd rocking in the new arena is going to be a huge benefit in what'll probably be a pretty tight game.
It'll be interesting to see if we get out and transition more than we have this year. We're not too good at it, I don't think, but we were pretty good at it last year, and we really dominated Wisconsin in the Kohl Center, and a lot of that had to do with our transition offense, I thought. Being there in like the second to last row in our good spots. I had a pretty good vantage point to see that. But I think I would like to see us get out and run a little more. Whether Wojo thinks we have the talent and ability to do that, I'm not really sure.
Well, I think one thing is going to be interesting to see is how we attack Hap when he's on defense. If we try to go small with Ed Morrow, I guess, at center, or even Joey at times, can we draw Hap out of the middle, bring him out to the three-point line and make him guard out on the perimeter? Or are we going to go at him with Theo John in the post and try and draw fouls that way? I think that getting him in foul trouble, Ethan Happ, that is going to be a key to our success. And I think that, you have to game plan around a team's best player. So it'll be interesting for me to see how Wojo decides to attack Happ, especially when he's on the defensive end.
So you heard Pete mention it there. And if you're looking at Wisconsin, if you're relatively unfamiliar with the Wisconsin roster this year, you probably still know Ethan Happ's name. According to Ken Palm, Ethan Happ is the number 2 player in the country. I don't know how you would characterize Ethan Happ. Heady player. What was that bingo card that we saw recently? He's a really talented player, but he's not the only guy on Wisconsin that you have to worry about. You have to look at a guy like Brad Davison, who's a sophomore who many Marquette fans will remember from last year. He typically plays at the 2 spot, the shooting guard spot. And then you have Demetric Trice, who's also a sophomore, getting the majority of minutes at the point guard spot. So I think Trice, Davison, and Happ are really the guys that Wisconsin runs their offense through that Marquette is going to need to key into to stop. Wisconsin also, Happ gets to start at the 5. Reavers, it's spelled a little bit differently, but pronounced Reavers, gets to start at the 4 spot traditionally. That's a 6'11 and 6'10 lineup down there at the 4 and the 5 spot. So Wisconsin has 2 big guys down low, but I think one of the more interesting matchups, as we've seen the development of Theo John, right? As we've seen the development of Ed Morrow, I think he's continued to get his feet on the ground. Ed has. I think one of the more interesting matchups is going to be points in the paint, how things are called by the officials in the interior, and how we try to attack Ethan Happ. I think you said it right, Pete. If I'm them, I go right at Ethan Happ. We've got Theo, we've got Ed Morrow. Matt Helt doesn't have too much in his offensive game, but I think that's where I'd want to start. I'd want to put pressure on their talented players, on their leader, and see if we can't get him into a little bit of foul trouble to start, and then see how that opens up the rest of the game.
Yeah, the problem with our roster as currently constructed against Happ is that none of our big guys can shoot. So Pete mentioned maybe having Joey out there doing the pick and roll, but I think Joey get eaten alive by Happ. If he guarded him down low on defense. So I think this is going to be a big game for Matt Helt, actually. I think he's going to get a lot of minutes. He can guard. We've seen before that he can guard non-perimeter shooting big men pretty effectively. And I think he'll get a lot of minutes on Happ, mostly because he'll probably draw some fouls on Theo. But yeah, I think it's a great point trying to get him in foul trouble with the pick and roll. But like Theo John, he doesn't work on the perimeter, and neither does Ed, and neither does Matt. So I don't know. I'm not sure what you do there.
Well, and also I think when we're matching up with Happ when he's on offense, it'll be interesting to see, how aggressively we double him when he's in the post. The thing that scares me about Demetric Trice sitting out there on the perimeter is that he's shot 30 out of 50 from three this year, 60%.
Right. Probably a lot of those from Ethan Happ passes, who's averaging like 5 assists a game.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just looking at that and thinking, here comes 6 for 10 against us. There's your 60%. So if we do double, is our defense going to have the awareness to be able to find Trice on the perimeter and not leave these secondary guys with wide open shots? I think we've done a decent job of closing out on the 3-point line this year, but when you have a sharpshooter of Trice's caliber and an interior presence with Happ, it's going to be difficult to have your eyes on both of those guys at the same time. So it's going to be really interesting to watch that 2-man game and see how we try and defend it.
Yeah, and Reavers, I think the 6'11" guy, he can shoot it too. He's got a decent 3-point percentage this year, and Davison can shoot.
Reavers won't be out there with Hap, will he?
Yeah, they both
sure.
started. They both started the game against Rutgers that I watched.
Oh, okay.
Right. So yeah, I mean, like Trice's guy, if Hap's on the side of the court with the ball on the same side as Trice, that defender who's guarding Trice will have to kind of stay on him at the 3-point line to avoid that kick out. So I don't know. But the one thing about Ethan Happ is, Wisconsin is 12th in the country, but that's about the equivalent to Ethan Happ's free throw percentage shooting also. So if we do get in foul trouble, we can always count on that.
So I think the interesting thing for Wisconsin is –
thought that would be a little funnier for you guys. But.
Sorry. The interesting thing for Wisconsin is that, this is one of the bigger tests. They're one of their bigger tests of the non-conference schedule, I guess I should say. They have one loss on the season. It's on a neutral court to the third-ranked team in the country, Virginia, who outslowed them 53-46. But playing on Marquette's court, I think the home court advantage. One of you said this earlier. I think this game is going to be a lot about momentum. I think it's going to be a lot about the energy in the building. I know the fans are going to bring it, but I think that's going to dictate a big part of that, which is why I think fouls are going to be so important early on, which is why I think the focus of Marquette's offensive attack, if we're just going to focus on the offensive attack for a little bit, I think is what can we get out of Theo down low offensively? Because I think offensively speaking, he's the big guy that we can go to. But then how do we get Sakar involved offensively to relieve a little bit of pressure off of Marcus and off of Sam? Sam's not going to have another 0-6 shooting night. Pete, you said that the other day. Mm-hmm. Marcus is always going to be able to get his if he has an inch. So I think the key is how do we attack the interior? You saw that with Rutgers. Rutgers scored 34 points in the paint against Wisconsin the other day. I think if Marquette can figure out a way to consistently finish at the basket in the interior, whether it's Theo, whether it's Sakar, whether it's Joey doing a little, mid-range or close-in mid-range, I think that's going to be the key to the game. Now, there could always be the situation where for some unknown reason Marquette just goes unconscious from the three-point line, and that blows the game open. But I think if you're looking from an X and O standpoint, you can't rely on that, right? And we need to figure out in the course of our offense how to get those things working in the interior.
In some regards, I think it'll be a little bit like the Louisville game where they clearly focused on getting the ball to Theo down low. But also, we need to get Sam back to being Sam. And I think this is going to be his best game of the year. I don't know why. I just got a feeling that he's been pissed that he hasn't played up to his capabilities so far this year. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Why do you think – this is a genuine question. Why do you think Sam struggled so much? Folks, whether you saw it or not, Sam went 0 for 6 from the three-point line. And these were wide open three-point shots, right? It was so uncharacteristic. What was that?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, Mike. I think sometimes you just go through slumps.
Well, some of those shots were halfway down and rattled out, to be fair. It's not like –
No, they weren't bricks.
I will say that he hasn't gotten his rhythm on the transition three yet. I think that he hit one against – whether it was against Kansas State or early in the game against UTEP, I can't remember. But that shot, both for Sam and Marcus, has kind of been missing. It is interesting. You mentioned the transition game earlier, and I think that the key to getting our transition going is the threat of that three-point shot. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get a steal early and get Sam one of those shots, get him going. I think that builds a lot of momentum for him personally. Sam's also one of those guys, too, where you can tell he's really pissed when he misses a shot. Mm-hmm. He has those little facial reactions and things like that because he knows, in his mind, he's a perfect shooter. So when he's hitting, he really feels exactly how he feels. What the interesting thing, if you look at actually the student shooting statistics, Sam Hauser and Sakar have an equal field goal percentage, and Sam's shooting 37 from three, and Sakar is shooting 36 from three. So
that's really bad. That's not good.
Yeah, whether you want to say that's Sam shooting at a Sakar level or Sakar shooting up to a Sam level, that's up to you, I think. But clearly there's some positive growth to be had for Sam.
My reason for my feeling that Sam's going to go off in this game is what I like to call the Hawk Harrelson principle of sports analysis, which is he's due. That's it.
As I've watched Marquette this season, early in this, thinking about Sam and thinking about his role in our offense, I don't necessarily have any statistics to back this up. This is really an eye test thing, but it doesn't look – well, I guess maybe taking a step back, I think this team from a Marquette, from a rotation standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, from a niche standpoint, this team looks unsettled to me. And I think that is a byproduct of we have so much competition for the various spots, which is a good thing. We haven't found our roles yet. And Mohan, you made the point the other day where maybe this is the game where it all clicks. I hope so. But even just watching the game the other night against UTEP, it's clear to me that while things are beginning to solidify, there's still uncertainty about the roles in this team. You see Jamal Cain still getting a few amount of minutes, and things are starting to come together. But how that impacts Sam's always going to get his minutes, and he's always going to get his shot off. But I don't think he's been able to get into a groove as much this season as maybe in past seasons where there's been fewer options on offense, because now we've got to get the ball down low frequently to Theo. Sam was frequently getting the ball down low last year, right? He was kind of the guy going down last year. So I'm not as convinced that Sam has been worked into this offense yet as maybe he will be coming down the road. Now, obviously, that's a challenge for the coaching staff. You got so many weapons, you got to figure out how to use them all. But I think there's still a little bit of adjusting to figure out what is the optimal level for this offense, because I don't think we've hit it yet. I don't think we've found even the right pieces to play at the right time. Not that, people are just missing open shots. That's going to happen. It's just the pieces haven't been put together yet.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons Sam was so good last year was he had Andrew Rousey on the court, and when you have either Andrew Rousey or Marcus Howard setting ball screens for you, who are both capable of driving to the hoop, that leaves Sam open for a lot of uncontested threes. And now that there's a lot more tape on that, and really there's only we really only have one major threat to dribble drive, for penetration in Marcus. Mm-hmm. People can stay that much closer to Sam, and they're ready. And Sakar too. He's not a great finisher at the rim, but now that there's that much more tape, we've become a little more predictable, especially when Sam's setting that high screen pick and roll. That we know they're just looking to cut it back to Sam or either Marcus take it. So teams have been obviously game planning for that. So it's taken a little bit for Sam, but as far as figuring out how all the pieces fit, that's a big challenge because of that exact point that there's not a lot of guys on this team that can take it off the dribble to the hoop. Yeah.
And Marcus, I would agree. Marcus is the only one, right? Like, I don't think Sam can quite do it, because you see Sam get the ball and he does that crab dribble, backing guys down, which he's really good at, do the fadeaway, mid-range jumper. But I know we had this debate on the pod before whether Sam can do the dribble drive attack or not. I still don't think that's his I still don't think that's his forte. It's just shocking to me that Marcus is the only one that can do it, and he's 5'11". 5'10".
Well, I think that Sakar, we briefly mentioned this on the UTEP recap, but Sakar's put together 2 solid games in a row.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I hope that he can build on
right
that.
After I shat on him, by the way, so I'd like to take credit for lighting fire under his ass.
And I'm still holding my stock on Joey and Sakar for a later date. I think that they're both showing growth. I'm happy with my early season investment there. One intangible factor that we haven't talked about yet, Mike, you kind of mentioned that this is a rivalry, but it's like the Super Bowl for Wisconsin basketball players. For Sam and Joey, this is their Super Bowl. For Matt Helt in his senior performance, this is his Super Bowl, as much as it is for Hap. And then also, Kobe King on Wisconsin, who is kind of, one of the most prized Wisconsin recruits in the last few years. He's been playing 20 minutes a game for them. So I'm sure he'll be fired up to play in his first Marquette-Wisconsin matchup. This game honestly could go either way. You could have the mainstay guys do their thing and the role players be the difference makers. Or, I think if it's possible, if someone can have a breakout defensive performance, if the centers can have a breakout defensive performance and shut down Hap, for example, or if we can limit Trice on the perimeter, I think that is another route to winning because, Wisconsin's got bodies. They're going to keep running, those random 6'4" guys off the bench and getting some open shots. But that intangible factor of the Wisconsin guys, who has that big game, who wins the battle of Wisconsin, and then also, can we shut down one of the big ones? I think that's what I'm really watching for.
Well, I forgot one major aspect, which is how many charges will Brad Davison take?
We should take a bet on overall charges in this game.
Well, he's going to try his ass off.
No, I mean between both teams.
Oh, yeah. Well, Davison loves the publicity that he got, so he's probably just going, what did he have, 5 last time? So he's going to try to go for 6.
You know what I loved the other day against UTEP is I loved Ed Morrow taking that flop charge. He really sold the shit out of that. It was unbelievable, but I love seeing that sort of heady play out of guys who are taking advantage of people with less experience. So hopefully Marquette can get a little bit in on that game as well with Sam and with Marcus. I agree. Look, on paper, Wisconsin is statistically the better team. But on the road, I don't know if Wisconsin has beat a team as good as Marquette. And, according to Ken Palm, they haven't. So, look, the Fiserv Forum is going to be lit. Beers will be flowing. And I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on this Wisconsin team. And we'll see how they handle. They are no doubt a talented team. But keep this in mind. They are not the best team Marquette has played this year. Marquette balled out against Kansas, albeit on a neutral court for a half, and then we got swept away. But Marquette has played talent of this competition. So I don't think this is a situation where Marquette's walking into this game and saying, oh my God, it's the 12th ranked Badgers. How do we do this? We've seen this. I think these guys are going to have a measure of poise. The Marquette guys are going to have a measure of poise walking into this game to say, Brad Davison, Ethan Happ, okay. Show me what you got. And I hope they bring that attitude because that's the attitude they should have. I'm hopeful. I don't know if we win, but I don't think you're going to see this Marquette team fold like we did in Indiana or like we did in the second half of Kansas. I think this team is trending in the right direction, and I agree with Mohan that I think we see signs for that beginning on Saturday.
What do you guys think is going to be the bench player that has the biggest impact? I
don't know. I kind of want to say help. A little helter-skelter action. I honestly do. I don't know. I feel like he's going to be I think he's going to be pivotal in defending Hap.
I think it could be helped, but I think for me the real answer is Chartouni. Chartouni's coming off the bench, and Chartouni has the ball in his hand so much that I guess this isn't – he will have it. But if Chartouni has a good game, if Chartouni doesn't turn the ball over 3 to 4 times on unforced turnovers, we're going to win this game. Because I think Chartouni is important enough. He has the ball in his hands enough. He's distributing enough that if he makes smart decisions consistently and can knock down a couple of threes, that just, adds more fuel to the fire. So I'd say Chartouni. I don't know if he will, but I think if he does, I think we win.
One thing you said that was interesting about Ed Morrow, you complimented him drawing that charge, even if it was a bit of a flop. I think that's just a sign, though, of him getting comfortable because those are instinctive plays. And once you stop thinking out there, you make plays like that. So hopefully that's a good sign of things to come. We've seen flashes of it from Chartouni as well, but again, it's minutes on the court with these guys. It's getting in the flow. But watch out if Ed Morrow and Chartouni both all of a sudden are comfortable out there in the court.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you could kind of tell after that Louisville game that Morrow kind of turned a switch. Like he had his one big play was that block along the baseline. And I think that one play kind of triggered something in him like, all right, now I'm good. I contributed to this team. I'm part of this team now. I can be relied upon. Before that, he looked bad.
Lost
on defense. He looked kind of just out of sync, completely out of sync on offense. And after that game, it seems like he's been kind of a completely new player. He's been energized on the offensive glass, and he's had some easy like putback dunks on some, and then also some nice feeds from Marcus at times where he's kind of threw down some dunks. So I'm very happy to see that, because obviously we've talked a lot about him bringing that intensity and that sort of bulk to this roster, which we so desperately needed. And so if I was nervous that we weren't going to actually see any of that come to fruition. So this development has been nice.
And he's shooting 67% from the field, which can't be mad at that.
Yeah.
This concept of the team coming together, you think back over the past several years, certainly in the Steve Wojciechowski era, you think about Matt Carlino, you think about Caton Reinhardt, you think about Harry Froling. Now,
Matt Carlino, that's the first player I think of when I think of Marquette basketball, baby. In the last
Trent Blackledge for sure.
Yeah. But you think about those guys who were additions to a team and had to be fit into the offense, had to be fit in together. All of those guys, they all turned out differently, right? But we didn't know by this point in the season, we didn't see their full potential. I think there was a couple of months where Caton Reinhardt was enemy number one in Milwaukee. Matt Carlino wasn't far from that, right? Harry Froling was kind of that through his whole career at Marquette. But we have a team full of people who are in that same position. And so that's why we've kind of beat the drum here on the pod about let's see how December unfolds. Let's see as this team comes together, because I think it does take time. I don't think that's an excuse from the coaching staff. That's not an excuse from us. These things do take time, and we've seen evidence over the past few games, like the Ed Morrow point, like some of the other points that have been made, that people are beginning to find how these pieces put together. So with that, let's transition to a little bit of final thoughts on what you guys think is going to happen against Wisconsin this week. I'll tell you, it is a 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central tip on Fox. We're on the big Fox. We're not on Fox Sports 1. We're on Fox.
Fox News.
Fox
Sports 0.
Ken Pomeroy predicts this as a 1-point loss for Marquette, a 69-68 victory for Wisconsin, and gives Marquette a 48% chance of winning. It feels a little bit higher to me. I want to see how Wisconsin reacts to being in this atmosphere. This is something, Ethan Happ has faced that. Brad Davison has faced that before. Well, I guess
not in Milwaukee.
Not in Milwaukee. That's true. So let's see how they react to the crowd. Let's see how the officials call the game. I think all those things are going to be important, but I like Marquette's chances. I think we've got a shot.
At the beginning of this, I was kind of leaning towards Wisconsin. And then I kind of started thinking about what we haven't really talked about that much, was that Kansas State game was an awesome win for us. Like our biggest win in the Wojciechowski era outside of the Villanova game. I'm kind of speaking some fucking hyperbole there because I haven't really put too much thought in that. But it's at least the biggest season. The biggest early season game that I can remember, especially in the non-conference. Because that team, Elite Eight team with Dean Wade, there's only one D Wade allowed in the Fiserv, that's for sure. But the way we took it to it, obviously it was a credible performance by Marcus. We'll see how many times he can do that again. But thinking about that a little more as we've kind of gone on in this pod just makes me think that we're going to be ready for this Wisconsin team. Like I said, I think Sam's going to go off. I think he's finally going to kind of make his imprint on this season outside of that first half against Kansas. I don't know. I think we take it to him.
I want to start with some empiricisms here. What do we really know? So we know Marquette is probably not going to win by 20 again in this game. We had our way with them last year. I mean, as much as we probably could because we have the talent, I don't see us running away with this game. I also don't see Wisconsin running away with this game either. That's just not their MO. The other thing that we know for a fact, getting back to intangibles, like you said, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central start on a Saturday. That's a lot of time for Marquette fans to work up a lather in the pregame.
Oh,
this ain't no noontime start.
I will be in full bath mode.
Full bath
by that time. Yeah, I'll be lathered up. I'll be just drowning.
And I think that because of the new stadium and the deal with season tickets, I don't think there's a lot of Marquette fans who were selling their new tickets to this game to Badgers fans. So I don't expect to see very much red at all. Obviously, StubHub exists, but this is what you would call a strong home court advantage, as strong of a home court advantage as we will get in a game at Marquette this season. And I think that goes a long way. I'm pretty hyped for it, and I think that just that fan effort is going to give us the win. I think that there's going to be so many ebbs and flows. We showed that we're a team of runs, both for the good and the bad. But I just don't think that Wisconsin can put together longer runs than we can on them, more sustained ones. I think that we're able to break that up with our shooters kind of busting out of slumps. We'll be able to stop their runs. And I think that we come out on top, a 6 to 7 point win.
So I think one interesting thing to note as we wrap up here is that if you look at the Wisconsin roster, there's only one player on their roster, Kobe King, who's contributing some minutes, less than 12% of possessions used, so nearly invisible according to Ken Pom. Kobe King, who's a freshman. Everyone else played in that game last year that Marquette won. Now you look at the Marquette roster from last year, we're arguably better than we were last year, even with the fluidity that we've had early in this season. So I think if you look at those two, Wisconsin is a year more experienced, Happ's a senior, Davison is a sophomore, Trice is a sophomore. But Marquette has added all these pieces where if we can get them to click, I think we're far and away the better team. I really do. I don't think Wisconsin has
Here comes the L.
I don't think
Badger Red.
I don't think Wisconsin has done anything overly impressive this year. I think if Wisconsin is a team that you don't play frequently or you don't know how to handle, you don't know how to approach their style, that's one thing. And so for a lot of the teams that they play in the non-conference, that is the case. We play them every year. Whether he does it successfully or not is one thing, but Wojo knows how to attack this offense, this boring fucking offense that they run. So
we have to put a disclaimer at the beginning now.
So it would not shock me if Marquette runs away with this thing to a certain degree, because I do think that potential is there. Now, I also think there's a potential for a loss, of course, but I think there's a scenario in which we could run away with this game. So I've had a couple of beers. They're sitting here empty on my desk right now, but we'll see how the game turns out.
Quick question. Who do you guys think is the better coach, Wojo or Greg Gard?
Oh, God.
I don't really want to answer that because that would mean I would admit that I've thought seriously about how good of a coach or bad of a coach Greg Gard is.
Yes, I totally agree with that. The amount of brain time I've given to Greg Gard is
one more brain buster for you. This is a comedic value. What would you guys say are things that are less boring than Wisconsin basketball?
Everything.
This is good.
Less boring than Wisconsin or more boring than Wisconsin basketball? Because everything is less.
I think
boring.
you know what I'm trying to say here.
More boring?
Oh, it's just wait. Oh, I thought were you just open? That's just open ended.
I was hoping that you'd rattle off some.
Oh, maybe like peanut butter sandwiches with just peanut butter.
What about
non-alcoholic beer would be my guess.
Mumford and Sons.
Oh,
the sixth round of the NFL draft.
Yeah.
This podcast episode, maybe? I don't know.
Whoa! Hey, this is good stuff.
Scrambled eggs. I mean, the food.
Oh. All right. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. I think if you've garnered anything from this episode, it's that one, we're in a good mood, and two, that is partially
we're going to lose.
Two, that is partially because we think we have a legitimate shot this weekend. I checked just recently. The line for the game is not out yet. Vegas always knows, so we don't know what they know yet. But a national televised game, I think Marquette has a real shot, and we should expect nothing less. We didn't talk about it too much, but this is really important for Marquette's not only non-conference case, but for our season case. We talked about it a little bit in the previous pod. the Big East is still figuring itself out with Villanova not as strong, Xavier looking a little bit different. The Big East is not as strong as it was the past few years. So these non-conference wins are important. So let's see what Marquette team shows up. So Pete, any final thoughts from you fellows?
You mentioned a little bit earlier, Mike, the Kansas State win is better than any win Wisconsin has, and that has led me to believe that I think we're gonna pull this one out.
Just in case we lose, I'm bringing an umbrella to the next podcast, because if we ask B. Henry, the sky will be falling.
Yeah, and I'll bring you guys a very detailed report of the Fiserv Forum and all its bells and whistles.
Ooh, hit the Chick-fil-A.
I will probably try to hit as many different items or serving items as I possibly can.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here on the Real Chili Podcast. Signing off for Pete Worth and Pete Mohan. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with the Real Chili Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.